Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the great pool in her father's palace. The water was warm and blue, just like the oceans of her home world. But today it felt cold to her. She knew what was coming. Her father had called for her, and when Emperor Thane called, it was never good news. "Lyra," her father's voice boomed across the chamber. His massive form rose from the deeper waters, scales shining in the artificial light. "Come here, daughter." Lyra swam closer, her own smaller form moving with the grace all Zephyrians were born with. She had always been the smallest of his children, the weakest, the broken one, as the court doctors like to whisper. "Yes, father," she said, keeping her voice steady. Emperor Thane's large eyes fixed on her. They were the color of deep ocean water, just like hers. But where hers held warmth, his held only cold calculation. "The humans have been making demands again," he said. "They want a marriage alliance. They think they can force our hand with their crude politics." Lyra felt her heart sink. She had been married 3 times before, 3 times to powerful Zephyrian nobles. 3 times she had failed to produce children. The doctors had finally declared her barren 2 years ago. It was the greatest shame a Zephyrian female could carry. "Which of my sisters will you offer?" she asked quietly. Her father's laugh was harsh and bubbling. "Sisters? No, my dear daughter. I have a better idea." The realization hit her like a cold current. "Father, no. Please." "Oh, yes," Emperor Thane said, his voice filled with cruel amusement. "You will marry one of these humans. Let them have our empire's greatest failure. It seems fitting." Lyra closed her eyes. She had thought her days of political marriages were over. Who would want a barren princess? But now she understood. This was not about wanting her. This was about insulting the humans while appearing to honor them. "The Galactic Council insists we make peace with them," her father continued. "Fine. We will give them exactly what they deserve. A useless princess who cannot even fulfill a female's most basic function." The words stung, but Lyra had heard them before. She had learned to build walls around her heart. "Which human?" she asked. "Some colony administrator, Captain Jake Morrison they call him. He runs one of their frontier settlements. New Terra, I think." Emperor Thane waved a fin dismissively. "It matters little. All humans are the same. Short-lived, crude, and simple." Lyra had never met a human, but she had read about them. The report said they were adaptable and emotional. Too emotional, according to most Zephyrian scholars. They formed what they called love bonds, rather than proper breeding partnerships based on genetic compatibility. "When?" she asked. 2 weeks. The ceremony will be held at Harmony Point Station. All the proper representatives will be there to witness our great generosity." The Emperor's tone made it clear exactly what kind of generosity this was. Lyra bowed, her head. "I understand, Father." "Good. Try not to embarrass our family any more than you already have." With that dismissal, Lyra swam away. She made her way to her private chambers, a smaller pool connected to the main palace complex. Here, she could be alone with her thoughts and her shame. She had tried so hard with her first husband, Lord Kalen. He had been patient for a year, then distant. Her second marriage to Commander Voss had lasted only 8 months before he requested an annulment. Her third husband, Counselor Dren, had barely spoken to her after the wedding ceremony. Each time, the doctors had run their tests. Each time, they found the same thing. Her reproductive system was fully developed but somehow inactive. They used words like dormant and unresponsive. The older doctors called it the curse of the deep waters, though none could explain what that meant. Now she would be sent to live among aliens, creatures that breathed air instead of water. They would have to build special environments for her, and she would be forever trapped in artificial pools while her husband lived his normal life around her. The thought of it made her feel more alone than ever. 3 days later, a message arrived from the human colony. It was not what she expected. Instead of formal diplomatic language, it was simple and direct. Princess Lyra, I know this arrangement is political. I want you to know that I will do everything I can to make you comfortable on New Terra. We have built proper aquatic facilities, and our scientists are eager to learn about Zephyrian needs. I hope we can at least be friends. Captain Jake Morrison. Lyra read the message 3 times. No previous husband had ever written to her directly. They had all gone through official channels and formal protocols. This human had used small, simple words that somehow felt more real than all the fancy speeches she was used to. Still, she knew what this was, a duty marriage. He would be polite and distant, just like the others. The only difference was that he was human, which somehow made it worse. At least her previous husbands had been her own species. This Captain Morrison probably did not even know how Zephyrians lived or what they needed. The wedding preparations began immediately. Ships were arranged. Diplomatic messages flew between worlds. The Galactic Council praised Emperor Thane for his wisdom and generosity. None of them knew the real reason for the marriage. On the day before her departure, Lyra's youngest sister, Naya, came to visit her. I am sorry, Naya said, settling into the warm water beside her. This is not fair to you. Nothing has been fair to me for a long time, Lyra replied. At least this time I know it is meant as an insult. I will not have false hopes. Maybe this human will be different, Naya suggested. The reports say they are not like us. They might not care about children the same way. Lyra almost smiled. That would be something, would it not? A husband who does not see me as a failure. You are not a failure, Naya said firmly. You are the smartest of all of us. You understand science and politics better than our brothers. Father is a fool not to see your worth. Father sees exactly what he needs to see, Lyra said. A daughter he can use to insult his enemies. The next morning, Lyra boarded the transport ship that would take her to Harmony Point Station. She carried only a few personal belongings. Everything else would be provided according to the marriage contract. As her homeworld grew smaller behind her, Lyra wondered what kind of life awaited her among the stars. She had no expectations of happiness. She had learned long ago that such hopes only led to deeper pain, but perhaps, if she was very lucky, this Captain Morrison would be kind enough to leave her alone. Perhaps she could find some purpose in studying human culture or helping with the colony's scientific projects. Perhaps she could build a life that had meaning, even if it had no love. The stars outside her window seemed to mock her hopes, cold and distant as always. But somewhere among them was a world called New Terra, and a human who had written her a simple, honest message. For the first time in years, Princess Lyra allowed herself to wonder what that might mean. The wedding ceremony at Harmony Point was nothing like Lyra had expected. She had prepared herself for cold formality, for diplomatic speeches that meant nothing. Instead, Captain Jake Morrison had surprised her from the moment they met. He was shorter than Zephyrian males, with brown hair and kind eyes. When he saw her for the first time, floating in her ceremonial pool, he did not stare at her like she was some strange creature. He simply smiled and said, "Hello, Princess. I am Jake. I hope this will work out well for both of us." The ceremony itself was a mixture of human and Zephyrian traditions. Jake had learned enough of her language to speak his vows in Zephyrian, though his pronunciation was terrible. Somehow that made it more meaningful, not less. He had tried to honor her culture. After the ceremony, they traveled together to New Terra. The journey took 5 days, and Jake spent time with her every day. He asked about her interests, her studies, her opinions on colony management. He listened to her answers like they mattered. "I studied biochemistry before I became a colony administrator," Lyra told him on the 3rd day. "I always wondered how different species might adapt to new environments." "That is perfect," Jake said, his eyes lighting up. "We have been struggling with soil composition issues. Our crops grow, but not as well as they should. Maybe you could take a look at the problem." Lyra felt something she had not experienced in years. Someone wanted her expertise, not her bloodline or her political connections. They wanted her mind. When they arrived at New Terra, Jake showed her to her new home. She had expected a small pool connected to a human house. Instead, she found a complex of interconnected aquatic chambers that flowed into a beautiful natural lake. The design was thoughtful and elegant. "My team worked with Zephyrian engineers to design this," Jake explained. "We wanted you to feel at home, not trapped." Lyra swam through the spaces, marveling at the attention to detail. There were areas for rest, for work, for entertaining guests. Windows looked out onto the colony's gardens and workshops. She could see human children playing in the distance, their laughter carrying on the wind. "This must have cost a fortune," she said. Jake shrugged. "You are my wife. You deserve a proper home." Over the following weeks, Lyra discovered that life with Jake was completely different from her previous marriages. He included her in colony decisions. He brought her reports to review and asked for her input on everything from trade negotiations to crop rotation schedules. More surprisingly, he seemed to enjoy her company. In the evenings, he would sit by her pool and tell her about his day. He would ask about hers. They would discuss books they had read, problems they were trying to solve, dreams they had for the colony's future. Slowly, Lyra began to trust that this was real. Jake was not pretending to respect her intelligence. He was not waiting for her to fail so he could dismiss her. He genuinely valued her as a partner. The change in her own feelings surprised her. She found herself looking forward to their conversations. She began to care about his work, his challenges, his small victories. When he smiled at something she said, she felt warm in a way that had nothing to do with the heated pools. Dr. Amy Chen, the colony's head scientist, became Lyra's first real friend. Amy was fascinated by Zephyrian biology and eager to learn. She treated Lyra like a colleague, not a curiosity. "Your people's adaptation to aquatic environments is remarkable," Amy said during one of their research sessions. "The efficiency of your respiratory system could help us develop better life support for underwater mining operations." Lyra found herself working longer hours than she ever had before. Not because she had to, but because the work was interesting and important. She was contributing to something meaningful. Jake noticed her growing confidence. "You seem happier," he said one evening as they shared dinner. He sat on the edge of her pool while she floated nearby, their usual arrangement. "I am useful here," Lyra said. For the first time in my life, I am actually useful. You were always useful, Jake said firmly. Your previous husbands were fools not to see it. The way he said it, with such complete certainty, made Lyra's heart flutter. She had never had someone defend her so simply and directly. It was around this time that Lyra began to notice changes in her body. At first, she thought it was just the stress of adapting to a new world, but the symptoms persisted and grew stronger. She felt tired more often. Her appetite changed. Most strangely, she found herself more sensitive to emotions, both her own and others. When Jake was worried about a supply shortage, she felt his concern like a physical weight. When the colony children played near her pools, their joy seemed to fill the water around her. Amy noticed the changes during one of their regular health checkups. Your hormone levels are unusual, Amy said, studying the test results. Have you been feeling unwell? Not unwell exactly, Lyra said. Just different. Amy ran more tests, then more tests. Finally, she asked Lyra to come to the medical bay for a comprehensive scan. Jake came with her, holding her hand as they walked. It was such a simple gesture, but it meant everything. None of her previous husbands had ever held her hand. The scan took an hour. Amy studied the results with growing excitement and disbelief. Lyra, she said finally, her voice shaking, you are pregnant. The words hit Lyra like a physical blow. That is impossible. According to every medical text I have studied, yes, it should be impossible, Amy agreed. But the scans do not lie. You are definitely pregnant. About 6 weeks along. Jake squeezed Lyra's hand. Are you sure? He asked Amy. Completely sure. I have run every test twice. Amy looked between them with wonder. This should not be possible. Zephyrian and human biology are completely incompatible. That is established science. Lyra felt her world spinning. After years of being told she was barren, after 3 failed marriages, after accepting that she would never have children, she was pregnant with a human's child. How? She whispered. I do not know, Amy admitted. But I intend to find out. This could change everything we know about cross-species biology. That night, Jake and Lyra sat by her pool in stunned silence. The news was too big, too impossible to fully understand. Are you happy? Jake asked finally. Lyra considered the question. 3 months ago, she would have said pregnancy was impossible for her. 3 months ago, she had been resigned to a life of political duty and loneliness. Now, she was married to a kind human who treated her like an equal. She was doing meaningful work, and she was carrying a child that should not exist. Yes, she said, surprised by how true it was. I am happy, terrified, but happy. Jake smiled, the expression transforming his whole face. Good, because I am happy too. Terrified, but happy. News of the pregnancy spread quickly through the colony. The human settlers were fascinated and supportive. Messages began arriving from other colonies, from scientific institutions, from government officials. But not all the messages were positive. Some came from Zephyrian space, demanding proof, questioning the legitimacy of the pregnancy, calling it impossible or even fraudulent. Emperor Thane's message was the worst. He accused Lyra of lying to gain attention, of consorting with alien technology to fake a pregnancy, of bringing shame upon their species. He cannot accept that he was wrong about me. Lyra said after reading her father's harsh words. Let him think what he wants, Jake said, his voice hard. We know the truth. Amy knows the truth. Our child will know the truth. As the weeks passed and Lyra's pregnancy progressed, it became clear that this was no trick or fraud. The child was real, healthy, and developing normally despite being something that should not exist. Scientists from across human space requested permission to study the pregnancy. Zephyrian researchers demanded access. Political leaders on both sides began to realize that this simple marriage alliance had become something much more significant. But in their home by the lake on New Terra, Lyra and Jake focused on the miracle growing within her. They read books about human and Zephyrian child development. They prepared a nursery that could accommodate both air and water. They chose names that would work in both languages. Most importantly, they fell deeper in love with each passing day. The pregnancy had not created their bond, but it had revealed its strength. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The Barren princess who had been given to a human as a joke was becoming something no one had expected. She was becoming a mother. Dr. Amy Chen had never been more excited about a research project in her life. The pregnancy that should not exist was teaching them things about biology that no one had ever imagined possible. Look at these readings, she told Jake and Lyra, during their weekly appointment. The fetal development is perfect. Better than perfect, actually. The child is showing enhanced neural activity and improved physical markers compared to either pure human or pure Zephyrian children. Lyra floated in the medical pool, her belly now clearly showing her pregnancy at 4 months along. But how is this possible? Your own textbooks say our species cannot reproduce together. Amy pulled up holographic displays of genetic scans. That is what we thought. But we were looking at the wrong factors. We focused on genetic compatibility and ignored biochemical compatibility. Jake leaned forward in his chair. What do you mean? Human emotions produce specific chemical signals, Amy explained. When you feel love, your brain releases compounds like oxytocin, dopamine, and others. These chemicals circulate through your bloodstream. I know about human bonding chemistry, Lyra said, but what does that have to do with my pregnancy? Amy smiled with the excitement of discovery. Everything. It turns out that these human love chemicals act as triggers for dormant genetic pathways in Zephyrian DNA. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You are saying that Jake's love for me somehow activated my ability to have children? Lyra asked. Not just love. The specific biochemical environment that human emotional bonding creates. Your previous marriages were political arrangements. There was no real emotional connection, no chemical bonding. Your reproductive system remained dormant because the trigger was never present. Jake shook his head in wonder. So Lyra was never actually barren? Correct. She was waiting for the right biochemical key to unlock her fertility, a key that only emotional bonding with a human could provide. Amy brought up more data, her excitement growing. This explains so much about Zephyrian evolution. I found references in your ancient texts, Lyra. Stories about the deep bonding that was required for reproduction in your species' early history. Lyra thought about the old stories her grandmother used to tell. Tales of Zephyrians who found their soul currents, and only then could create life together. She had always thought they were just romantic myths. The modern Zephyrian approach to reproduction through clinical breeding programs has been suppressing your species' natural fertility triggers, Amy continued. You need emotional resonance to activate the biological processes. But why humans specifically? Jake asked. Human neurochemistry is unusually complex when it comes to emotional bonding. You produce a wider range of bonding chemicals and in higher concentrations than most species. You are essentially biological keys that can unlock dormant fertility in other species. The discovery had implications far beyond their personal situation. Amy brought in specialists from across human space. Dr. Lisa Park, a xenobiologist from Earth, arrived to help with the research. This could explain the fertility crises affecting multiple species across the galaxy, Dr. Park told them after reviewing Amy's data. Advanced civilizations often move away from emotional bonding in favor of rational breeding programs, but they may be accidentally suppressing their own reproductive capabilities. As Lyra's pregnancy progressed, more discoveries emerged. The baby was developing abilities that neither parent possessed. Brain scans showed neural patterns that combined the best aspects of both species. Your child will be able to breathe both air and water, Amy explained. The lung structure is adapting to allow for both types of respiration. The brain development suggests enhanced problem-solving abilities and improved emotional intelligence. But the scientific excitement was overshadowed by growing political tensions. News of the pregnancy had spread across the galaxy, and reactions were mixed. Progressive factions saw it as proof that cooperation between species could lead to remarkable benefits. Conservative groups viewed it as a threat to species purity. Some religious leaders called it a miracle. Others called it an abomination. The most troubling reactions came from Zephyrian space. Emperor Thane had moved from denial to anger. He sent increasingly harsh messages demanding that Lyra return home for proper medical evaluation. He cannot accept that his greatest failure has become his greatest success, Lyra said after reading her father's latest message. If I am not Barren, then his treatment of me was unjust. He would rather believe this is impossible than admit he was wrong. More concerning were reports of Zephyrian military ships gathering near the border of human space. Official statements claimed they were routine patrol exercises, but intelligence reports suggested otherwise. They might try to take you by force, Jake said, his worry clear. Your father cannot allow this pregnancy to prove him wrong publicly. Lyra placed her hand on her swollen belly. They will not take my child. Dr. Park brought news that made the situation even more complex. We have been contacted by representatives from 12 different species. They all report declining fertility rates in recent generations. They want to know if human emotional bonding could help their populations as well. 12 species? Amy repeated. This could affect the entire galaxy. Initial tests suggested the answer was yes. Preliminary data indicated that humans might have similar compatibility with multiple alien species. Their unique emotional chemistry could be the key to reversing declining birth rates across advanced civilizations. The implications were staggering. Humans who had been seen as newcomers to galactic politics might hold the key to the survival of multiple species, but with opportunity came danger. If humans possessed such valuable biological traits, some groups might try to exploit them. Others might see them as a threat to be eliminated. Jake increased security around their home. Colony defense forces were put on alert. Messages flew between human worlds as leaders tried to understand what they were dealing with. Through it all, Lyra focused on her health and her growing child. She continued her research work, though Amy insisted she avoid stress. She read everything she could find about hybrid development and cross-species biology. I want to understand what is happening to me, she told Jake one evening as they watched the sunset over New Terra's lakes. This child is not just our baby. It is proof that the galaxy can be different than we thought. Jake held her hand, their fingers intertwined. Whatever happens, we will face it together. I know, Lyra said. That is why this worked. Not because of biology or chemistry, but because we chose to face everything together. As her pregnancy entered the final trimester, Lyra began to feel her child moving more actively. The baby seemed to respond to both her emotional state and Jake's presence. When Jake spoke, the child would move toward his voice. When Lyra was upset, the baby would settle when Jake comforted her. Our child already understands bonding, Lyra observed. It knows we are a team. The galaxy might be changing around them, with political tensions rising and scientific discoveries reshaping what everyone thought they knew about biology. But at the center of it all was something simple and powerful, a love that had grown between two very different people who had chosen to build a life together. Whatever came next, their child would be born into a universe where love had literally made the impossible possible. The Zephyrian fleet arrived at the edge of New Terra's system on a cold morning in Lyra's 8th month of pregnancy. 12 massive ships, their bioluminescent hulls pulsing with threatening patterns. It was the largest Zephyrian military force ever seen in human space. Jake stood in the colony's command center, watching the fleet on the main display. His hands were clenched into fists, but his voice was steady. They want her back. Admiral Hayes from the human fleet had arrived 2 days earlier with 6 ships of her own. The forces were evenly matched, but a battle here would mean war between two species. It would destroy everything they had worked for. We will not let them take her, Admiral Hayes said firmly. Princess Lyra is under our protection now. But Lyra had a different idea. No, she said from her floating chair, designed to let her attend meetings while remaining in water. I will go back. The room erupted in protests. Jake was at her side. Instantly. Absolutely not. You are 8 months pregnant. The stress of travel alone could harm the baby. And walking into your father's court could be suicide, Admiral Hayes added. He has already declared your pregnancy impossible. If you return, he might declare it fraudulent and have you imprisoned. Lyra remained calm despite the chaos around her. If I do not go back, there will be war. How many people will die because my father cannot admit he was wrong. I will not have that blood on my hands. Dr. Amy Chen looked up from her medical readings. Lyra, the baby could arrive any day. You cannot give birth in a Zephyrian medical facility. They do not understand hybrid physiology. Then you will come with me, Lyra said simply. You and Dr. Park and a full medical team. We will demand safe passage for human doctors as part of any negotiation. Jake sat down beside her, taking her hand. This is too dangerous. Everything we have done has been dangerous, Lyra replied. Falling in love was dangerous. Getting pregnant was supposed to be impossible. But we did it anyway because it was right. She looked around the room at the faces of people who had become her family. My father sent me here as a joke. He thought he was giving you a broken princess who would prove human inferiority. Instead, I found love, purpose, and the ability to create life. I will return and show him exactly what his joke accomplished. 3 days later, Lyra's ship approached the capital world of Aquatica. Jake sat beside her, having refused to let her go alone. Dr. Park and her medical team were ready for any emergency. Admiral Hayes followed with 2 ships, claiming diplomatic escort duties. The planet was beautiful from space, all blue oceans and floating cities, but Lyra felt only dread as they descended toward the royal palace. The last time she had been here, she was considered a failure. Now she was returning with proof that everything the Empire believed about reproduction was wrong. Emperor Thane waited in the great throne chamber, surrounded by nobles and court officials. The massive aquatic space was designed to intimidate. With the Emperor's throne positioned at the deepest point, everyone else had to swim down to reach him, putting them in a position of submission. But Lyra did not swim down. Instead, she remained at the middle level, her pregnancy making her buoyant in the water. Jake floated beside her in a breathing apparatus, while Dr. Park observed from a raised platform. "Daughter," Emperor Thane said, his voice carrying clearly through the water, "you have returned." "Yes, father." "As a mother." The words sent ripples of shock through the court. Many of the nobles had refused to believe the reports. Seeing Lyra's obviously pregnant form was undeniable proof. "Impossible," declared court physician Barren. "The princess is barren. These humans have used artificial methods to create a false pregnancy." Dr. Park stepped forward, her translator converting her words into Zephyrian. "Your Majesty, I am Dr. Lisa Park, xenobiologist from Earth. I have brought complete medical records documenting this pregnancy from conception to present. Princess Lyra is carrying a healthy, natural hybrid child." "There is no such thing as a natural hybrid," Physician Barren insisted. "Zephyrian and human biology are incompatible." "That is what we all believed," Lyra said, swimming closer to the throne. "But we were wrong. The incompatibility was not genetic. It was biochemical." She gestured to Dr. Park, who activated a holographic display showing their research findings. The court watched in stunned silence as the data revealed the truth about Zephyrian fertility. "Our people evolved to require emotional bonding for reproduction," Lyra explained. "The ancient texts speak of soul currents and deep bonding. We dismissed these as primitive superstitions, but they were biological reality." Emperor Thane's eyes narrowed. "You claim that these humans possess some magic that awakens fertility?" "Not magic. Chemistry." Lyra's voice grew stronger with conviction. "Human emotional bonding produces specific neurochemicals that trigger dormant reproductive pathways in our DNA. My previous marriages failed not because I was barren, but because they lacked the biochemical environment necessary for conception." The court erupted in arguments. Some nobles demanded to see the research data. Others accused Lyra of spreading human propaganda. A few whispered that this explained their own reproductive failures. "Even if this were true," Emperor Thane said, his voice cutting through the noise, "you have polluted our bloodline with alien genetics." "I have strengthened it," Lyra replied firmly. "My child will possess abilities neither species has alone. Enhanced intelligence, improved adaptability, the capacity to thrive in multiple environments. This is evolution, Father. This is progress." Court physician Barren swam forward aggressively. "I demand immediate medical examination. This pregnancy could be a hoax designed to embarrass our empire." "Examine away," Dr. Park said calmly. She had prepared for this challenge. But any examination must be conducted jointly with human medical experts who understand hybrid physiology. The examination took place in the Palace Medical Center, with both Zephyrian and human doctors present. Lyra submitted to every test they requested, while Jake stayed by her side and Dr. Park monitored her vital signs. The results were undeniable. Not only was the pregnancy completely natural, but the developing child showed remarkable health and development markers. "Impossible," Physician Barren muttered as he reviewed the scans. The neural development patterns are beyond anything I have seen. The child has inherited enhanced traits from both species, Dr. Park explained. Improved problem-solving capabilities from the human side, enhanced sensory abilities from the Zephyrian side. This baby will be extraordinary. But the medical evidence only made Emperor Thane angrier. If Lyra was not barren, then his treatment of her had been unjust. If human bonding could solve Zephyrian fertility problems, then his anti-human policies had been wrong. Guards, he commanded. Arrest the princess for treason against species purity. The command sent shockwaves through the court. Jake moved protectively in front of Lyra, while Dr. Park activated an emergency beacon. But before the guards could move, a voice spoke from the entrance to the chamber. "Father, stop!" Princess Naya swam into the chamber, followed by a group of younger nobles and scientists. "We have reviewed the research data. Princess Lyra is telling the truth." "Naya, stay out of this," the Emperor warned. "I cannot. The fertility crisis affects our entire empire. Birth rates have been declining for generations. If emotional bonding with humans can reverse this trend, we would be fools to ignore it." Counselor Reef, one of the Emperor's advisors, swam forward, hesitantly. "Your Majesty, we have received similar reports from other species. The Centaurian Republic, the Vegan Collective, even the Andromedans are experiencing fertility declines. If humans possess a solution, then humans become the most valuable species in the galaxy," Emperor Thane finished grimly, "and we become dependent on them." "Or we become partners," Lyra said quietly. "We could learn from each other, share knowledge, build something better than either species could achieve alone." The court fell silent. The Emperor stared at his pregnant daughter, the human who had married her, and the evidence that everything he believed might be wrong. Finally, he spoke. "You will remain here until the child is born. Then we will see what this hybrid truly represents." Lyra felt her baby move strongly, as if responding to the tension in the water. Soon, very soon, her child would arrive, and with it, proof that love could indeed create the impossible. Lyra went into labor during the early hours of a storm on Aquatica. The Palace Medical Center had been equipped with both air and water environments, allowing Dr. Park and the human medical team to work alongside Zephyrian doctors. Jake held Lyra's hand as another contraction gripped her. "You are doing great," he whispered. "Almost there." "The first baby is crowning," Dr. Park announced. "Wait, babies, Lyra, you are having twins." Twins had not shown up on any of the scans, but as Dr. Park explained later, hybrid development was so new that their equipment might have missed the second heartbeat. The first baby emerged into the water with a healthy cry that somehow worked in both air and aquatic environments. A daughter with Lyra's blue-green skin but Jake's brown hair floating naturally in the birth pool. "She is perfect," Lyra sobbed with joy and exhaustion. Minutes later, their son arrived, his skin more human-toned but with the distinctive gill slits of his mother's people. He immediately swam to his sister, and they floated together as if they had been born to this dual existence. Emperor Thane watched the birth from the observation area, his expression unreadable. But when the babies opened their eyes, revealing an intelligence that seemed far beyond their moments of life, something shifted in his face. "They are beautiful," Princess Naya whispered beside him, "and clearly healthy." Court physician Barren ran his scans with growing amazement. "Their neural activity is extraordinary. Brain development markers are off any scale I know, and their respiratory systems are fully functional for both air and water. Dr. Park carefully lifted the daughter while Dr. Chen examined the son. Perfect health in both children, enhanced development in every category we can measure. News of the successful. Birth spread across the galaxy within hours. The twins were living proof that human-alien reproduction was not only possible, but produced remarkable results. Over the following days, delegations arrived from dozens of worlds. The Centaurian Republic sent their top fertility specialists. The Vegan Collective brought offers of research partnerships. Even the usually isolated Andromedans requested information about human bonding chemistry. Emperor Thane found himself hosting the largest diplomatic gathering in Zephyrian history. His palace became the center of a revolution in biological understanding. The implications are staggering, reported Dr. Helen Foster, the head of the Galactic Health Organization. If human emotional bonding can trigger fertility in multiple species, we could be looking at a solution to the galaxy-wide birth rate crisis. Initial tests were promising. Human volunteers working with Centaurian partners had already produced 3 pregnancies. Vegan couples who had been unable to conceive for decades were showing positive results after bonding therapy with human emotional specialists. But perhaps the most important change was happening in Emperor Thane himself. Jake found the Emperor, alone with the twins one evening, watching them play in their specially designed nursery that featured both air and water areas. The babies moved seamlessly between environments, laughing and babbling in sounds that seemed to combine human and Zephyrian vocal patterns. "They are remarkable," the Emperor said quietly. "I have never seen children develop so quickly or show such awareness." "They are lucky," Jake replied. "They will grow up knowing they belong to both worlds." Emperor Thane was silent for a long moment. "I was wrong about you, about humans, about my daughter. We all make mistakes when we are afraid," Jake said diplomatically. No, this was more than fear. This was pride and stubbornness. The Emperor's voice carried genuine regret. "I treated Lyra terribly, because admitting she had value would have meant admitting my own failures as a father." Jake watched his children play, their joy infectious even across species lines. "She forgives you. She told me so yesterday." "She is too generous. I called her barren and useless. I gave her to you as an insult. Instead, she has become the key to our species' survival." That evening, Emperor Thane made a public announcement that shocked the entire empire. "Citizens of Zephyria," he said, his image broadcast across 12 star systems. "I stand before you today to admit a grave error. I have wronged my daughter Lyra, and in doing so, I nearly cost our people a great opportunity." The Emperor went on to formally apologize to Lyra and Jake, to announce new research partnerships with human colonies, and to establish exchange programs for young Zephyrians and humans interested in cross-species bonding. "The galaxy is changing," he declared. "We can change with it and prosper, or we can cling to old ways and decline. I choose progress." 6 months later, Lyra and Jake stood on the observation deck of Harmony Point Station, watching their children play with youngsters from a dozen different species. The twins had become celebrities across the galaxy, but more importantly, they were happy, healthy, and developing their remarkable abilities. "Look at them," Lyra said, smiling as her daughter helped a young Centaurian child learn to swim while her son taught a human boy how to hold his breath underwater. They do not see differences. They just see friends. Jake wrapped his arms around his wife, still amazed at how perfectly they fit together despite their different biologies. That is the future we are building for them. The future was indeed promising. Human-alien fertility programs were showing success across multiple species. New colonies were being established as joint ventures between humans and various alien civilizations. The Galactic Council had created a new department focused on emotional bonding research. Most importantly, the idea of species purity was giving way to concepts of hybrid vigor and cooperative evolution. Dr. Park says she has requests from 47 different species now, Lyra reported, all wanting to study human bonding chemistry. And how many human volunteers do we have for the programs? Thousands. Apparently, the idea of being galactic matchmakers appeals to human nature. Jake laughed. We always did like bringing people together. A year later, they returned to Harmony Point for a very different ceremony than their first wedding. This time, they renewed their vows surrounded by friends and family from across the galaxy. Their twins, now walking and chattering in 3 languages, served as flower children. Emperor Thane officiated the ceremony, his voice filled with genuine warmth as he spoke about love transcending all boundaries. When I first arranged this marriage, he said, I intended it as an insult. Instead, it became the foundation for a new era of cooperation and understanding. Love, it turns out, is the most powerful force in the universe. As Lyra and Jake exchanged new vows, their children played at the water's edge with young friends from dozens of species. In the audience, new mixed couples sat together, some already expecting children of their own. The Barren princess, who had been given to a human as a joke, had indeed returned as a mother. But she had become something even more important, a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. And in the years that followed, as hundreds of hybrid children grew up across the stars, playing together and learning from each other, it became clear that love had not just made the impossible possible, it had made a better future inevitable. The galaxy would never be the same. And that was exactly as it should be.